Folks, and welcome to another installment of the Good Natured Hour. Like I said in the email, we've got a real treat tonight. Our good friend Valerie is going to join us shortly with her slideshow tour of a place that I know is near and dear to her heart, and hopefully it will soon be to yours too. The Forest Glen Forest Preserve in down near Danville, Illinois. But before we get to that, there was just things I wanted to share with you, things that have happened over the last week. One, the tarantula shed again. And, I say that a lot. This is something that all spiders do. It's just when a tarantula does it, it's really noticeable because they're so big. But spiders, like insects, they have that hard, crunchy exterior, that exoskeleton that needs to come off as they grow. And bless her heart, little Ruby, she keeps growing. She's a mature female red-kneed tarantula. They get the name from the red on the knees. Sometimes the word Mexican is inserted in, but I think it kind of depends on where they come from. This is the part that pops up first. This is her, what would be the combination head and thorax part of her body, the cephalothorax. That kind of pops up. I always think of it like the hood of a car, it pops up, and then the spider, the tarantula, crawls out and leaves everything behind, including, I'm going to see if this will show up on the camera there. See these shiny things right here? Those are her fangs. Now, she uses them to eat her prey, which is usually crickets. So a time or two we've tried feeding her the dubia roaches that we have for our bearded dragons, but she's not a big fan of them, and they tend to dig down on the substrate and grow real big and never get eaten. But the fangs, that's her way of delivering venom into her prey. Could she bite people? Yes. Does she bite people? No. Doing that would cause her to waste venom needlessly. There's no way she's going to eat one of us. And yes, biting us would get us to leave her alone, but that would also come at a cost because venoms are made of protein. So she would have to then build up more venom again so that she could eat again. Instead, what they tend to do, and let's see, I can't really show it on here because there's not much left. This is where her abdomen was. Let me hold this up at an angle here where you can see it. So I know there's a bunch of legs hanging down here, but there's this structure right here. That's actually where her spinnerets were, down here. Like I said, everything comes off. But this abdomen is normally, it's about the size of I don't know, like a quail leg maybe, or a turtle leg. And it's covered with hairs. There's a special section, though, they're called urticating hairs, and that means, in my head, urticating means irritating. They're meant to flick off, and then they've got little barbs that get down in your skin. And to me, it feels like, because I've been flicked a time or two, not by Ruby, but by another tarantula we used to have. It feels kind of like when you're handling fiberglass insulation and you don't have gloves on, and you get those little shards of glass and they just kind of itch and burn, and you get them out eventually, but they're sort of irritating. Well, the hairs on the tarantula do that, and those little barbs that are on the end of them make them, the more you try to get them out, the more they dig in. So it can be itchy and uncomfortable for a few days. It's a great, it's a very effective deterrent for predators. Like say if a small mammal, a lizard, a bird tries to come up and grab the spider, she flicks those hairs off of her abdomen. Thing, her or she, because they're the ones that live longer, the females, female tarantulas can sometimes live 20 years or more, whereas the males 5 years or less. Both of them can flick hairs though, so I guess I shouldn't be sexist when I'm talking about them. But they flick those hairs, and you know, if it gets on the face, if it gets in the eyes, very effective way of avoiding getting eaten. So that was one thing I wanted to show you. Another thing, you know, I came in. I always love it when there's stuff on my chair that I didn't put there. Uh, you may have seen this if you've been out walking around the last few weeks. If you've been any of our woodland natural areas, you might have come across clusters of berries that look like this. I was talking with my friend Paul at King County Audubon last week, and he was describing these things. He said he had them all over his property and he'd never seen anything like it before. He said, they're not grapes, and they're not. Look at the other side of them. You can see these berries are on long stems. You might be familiar with this plant. The genus is Smilax, and I asked Paul if there were any. When he was showing me the pictures last week, I said, are there any thorns on the vines? And he said, no. So I kind of had an idea then of what it was. We have a couple of vines in our area that produce clumps of berries like this. One is catbrier, and catbrier is a vine that grows, it's got little thorns though along the stem. The clumps of those berries tend to be a little bit smaller. I saw some of that growing when I was on a walk at Norris Woods a couple of weeks ago. So very similar looking berries, but just smaller clusters. This, though, I'm pretty sure is the other one of the other smilax that occur around here. This one is carrionflower. And if we break that down, carrion, not carry on like luggage, but carrion like dead stuff, carrionflower. It's another vine, and it produces flowers that smell kind of like carrion. It's I believe it's pollinated by flies and beetles and such. I got Dick Young. This is actually the fancy 3rd edition with the color photos. Autographed by Mr. Young himself. May he rest in peace. But Dick, you know, he always would put in a bit of his own thoughts and opinions in addition to the scientific or the botanical descriptions of the plant. For carrionflower, there's actually 2 different species. Valerie, you're probably better at pronouncing these than I am. Acerata and Lacionura. Again, Smilax is the genus. He says they're 2 very similar species that are common in woodlands and fence rows with clean looking vines or shrubs, sometimes climbing to 10 feet. Pale green June flower clusters and compact blue-black berry clusters in early fall that resemble lollipops on their long stalks. There, I can pull one. Oops, no, I can't. So yeah, picture a cluster of lollipops on their long stalks. They often hold their leaves into late fall, and the berries are a good wildlife food source. Lacionura has leaf axil tendrils and is usually over 3 feet. Acerata, under 3 feet, rarely has tendrils and only in the upper leaf axis. Now, just below that, he has the description for catbrier, Smilax tamnoides, common in moist woodlands, climbing to 15 feet. Small clusters of late May flowers and also blue-black berries on short stalks. It is the thorniest vine we have, and a persuasive people barrier that should be used where one wants to say, stop. However, its bright evergreen outer twigs still lend a cheerful note in the winter landscape. I tell you, these books, they're great, not just for letting us know what grows here in Kane County, but also for Mr. Young's wonderful prose. All right. I just had one other thing before we get to our special guest tonight. And Valerie, I appreciate your being signed in and your patience. But the carrion flower and the smell might have you thinking back to last week when we were talking about and okay, called blasphemy weed in southern Indiana. All right. And I love it. Blasphemy weed. Now I lost my train of thought. Oh, smell, stink, carrion flower. Smells like carrion. Last week we spent some time talking about the stinkhorn mushrooms that had appeared over at one of our playgrounds here in St. Charles. Well, I went back to that playground again, and there was yet another flush of the fruiting bodies, the above ground fungi or the mushrooms that were being produced by all those mycelia that are in the substrate there in the wood chips. That's the part underneath the ground that's doing the actual decomposition. In the mushroom that's above the ground, that's the fruiting body that produces the spores, attracts the flies and such that carry them around. Well, and reading up on those mushrooms, there was a study that was done about the force, the osmotic pressure that builds up in those mushrooms as they then pop up out of the surface. So I wanted to see this myself. So I went back and I got 4 of the little, they're called devil's eggs, but it's what the mushroom issues forth from. I wanted to see this in action. So I put them in a dish pan. Well, actually, it's one of those hospital pans you get, when you're in the hospital, not the bedpan, the other one. And I loaded it up with wood chips, and I put 4 of those eggs in it. And last Friday night, I popped some popcorn. I thought, you know what, I'm sorry, no, this was Thursday night. I popped some popcorn, and I was going to watch this, nature on display in the hospital pan, and doggone, I fell asleep. And when I woke up, there were 2 perky stinkhorns. And I took a couple photos, but I missed the show. But the good news is that there were still 2 more of those eggs that had not opened up yet in the wood chips. So I spritzed them with some water, and I set up my cell phone camera. I put it on time lapse, and went to bed. And when I got up the next morning, there were 2 more. They didn't rise up quite as high as the first 2 stinkhorns, but there were 2 more stinkhorns. And the good news for you folks is I got it on video. So I condensed it down. It took about 12 hours for the mushrooms to come up, but and that translated to a little under 6 hours of time-lapse video. And then I shrunk that down because 5 minutes of watching a mushroom emerge, it seems like 5 hours. So I shrunk it down. It's about 30 seconds, but I thought you might want to watch it. So let's see, I'm going to do screen share. And all right, did I do it right? All right, is everybody seeing a mushroom?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, let's hit play. All right, so what we have here in the lower right is 1 egg, and in the right about in the center of the image is the other egg. Ready, set, go. So again, these are supposed to be coming out with a great deal of force. A number of these mushrooms together can raise asphalt and concrete. It got cold before I was able to, let me move this bar out of the way. Before I was able to go back and get any more, I don't know if I could still do this, because now my next thing is I would like to put something on top of them to see if they'll raise it up. And if I got a whole bunch of these eggs and I got them wet and then let them emerge, could they raise a board? Could they raise a brick? I don't know, lots more experiments to do, but there you go. That's what happens. It's just me and the furry roommates on a Friday night. That's the kind of trouble we get into. All right. With that, I know you're probably all anxiously awaiting. Here's some other voice besides mine. Valerie, I think I saw your name, and I think
I'm here. Can you hear me?
There you are. I don't know, Valerie doesn't need a whole lot of introduction, especially those of you who have been involved with the nature community here in Kane County for any length of time. But in case you are not familiar, Valerie, boy, I should have had you submit a CV that I could read of your illustrious accomplishments over the years. But you were nature programs manager for what,
25 years.
25 years with the Forest Preserve District of Kane County. Prior to that, you were in Northern California. Is that correct?
Yep. Trying to think. Yes. Northern California, Southern California, Oregon.
But you started out as an Illinois girl, an Illini, and back in your U of I days was when you first discovered Forest Glen. Is that correct?
That's right.
All right. Well, tell you what, let me get this mushroom. I forgot I was.
That's pretty darn cool, Pam. That's awesome.
That was fun. And I don't, actually that would be another question that, or another little experiment. We've had some snow. Are those eggs still viable if I went out? Because there were a lot more still in the soil over there. So I don't know. That might be to be continued, but much rather see your pretty face, Valerie. So I got rid of that, and we will bring up. Should I go ahead and start the slides?
Sure. Yes.
All right.
And then, so just like with the little film strips that some of us old people had when we were kids, Pam's got the controls and I don't, so I'm going to have to give her a little beep when it's time to go to the next slide. Well, I also brought a little bell, but
oh, perfect. Although that made me start drooling. I do have a little bit of the dog,
right?
But
kibble.
Yeah, it's too. I remember, when we'd have film strips in class and we'd go around the room, and if that's, I think, how the teacher kept everybody engaged, because then they say, all right, you've got to read the next slide. And so
you didn't want to be the one falling asleep when she said that.
Right, exactly. So without further ado here, let me pull this up, and we will get started with our tour of Forest Glen. All right, I think this is the right version, and I'm going to start it from the beginning.
That sounds good.
How about that?
Let's see.
Does that look? And let me move this.
There we go.
Down the way.
It. Yes. All right. So I recognize the names of most of you, and there are a few folks maybe I haven't met yet in person. But as Pam said, I worked up until about 3 years ago. I was the nature programs manager for the Forest Preserve District of Kane County, but I really started as a naturalist quite a long time ago. I solidified my goal to be a professional naturalist when I discovered Forest Glen Preserve. And my friends, many of you have heard me talk about Forest Glen all the time. I go there as often as I can. So what is the big deal about this place? And we'll learn a little bit about it, why it's near and dear to my heart. Okay, Pam?
Beep. Right.
Right. So where in the heck is Forest Glen? Well, I share this with you because I trust nature nerds. It's not very well, I don't know, it's not marketed far and wide. So not a whole lot of people know about it. It is a county, instead of a forest preserve district, it's part of a county conservation district, Vermilion County Conservation District. And this map shows where it is. So you can see where Champaign-Urbana is, and straight east is Danville, which is under the red blob there. And a little south of Danville is where Forest Glen Preserve is. A little closer, we can see on the little green area shows that it's forested, and it just to the northeast of Georgetown, little town of Georgetown, is Forest Glen. So, okay, go ahead. So really the story of Forest Glen, just like much of the story of Illinois, begins a long time ago. Hundreds of millions of years ago, in fact.
I got a little anxious there.
No, that's okay. That's fine. The land we now call Illinois did not always look the way it does now. And at one point it was actually a rainforest, a very tropical, humid rainforest. And as you probably know, our fossil fuels come from the remains of those lush vegetation of those forests from millions of years ago. And in fact, not too long ago, in 2014, some geologists were digging around Danville, and they discovered they were looking in an old mine, and they discovered an entire forest of fossils underneath Danville that revealed a whole forest. And this is one of those geologists, and that's in Danville, just north of Forest Glen. Those forests left lots and lots of coal, as well as these cool fossils. So the area has long been valued for its resources, and it has been mined quite a bit for coal. Okay, go ahead. And you can see in behind me, the rocks behind me those are all stratified, and they're shale. Technically they're shale, but in those kinds of rocks are found coal. You may have heard of Kickapoo State Park, which is in the same general ecological area. Kickapoo was built on reclaimed strip mines. So this whole area had been heavily mined, and was in its heyday, the earth was really kind of torn up when the mining industry was going strong in the 1800s, and it has since to recover. So Forest Glen is not by any means a virgin forest. It has had its own mining history and grazing history, but the geology, it is really cool. You can still see a lot of geology there, and you can see the earth healing itself. All right, next. This I just picked up a few days ago. This is a piece of shale, and shale is a rock that breaks very easily, and you can see that it breaks into these little plates. Given enough time, that shale, which is a sedimentary rock, will become the metamorphic rock slate. And we use slate in building and construction and things like that. And that's the kind of material you can find all over at Forest Glen. All right, next. If you're in KCCN, you have undoubtedly heard a lot about glaciers. So it's hard to look at Illinois anymore, and it's hard to understand it without knowing a little bit about the glaciers. Long after the tropical forest and the shallow tropical seas, long after that was a series of ice ages, and glaciers, huge blocks of ice, land masses of ice, scraped across the landscape, but they didn't scrape evenly across the landscape. The most recent glaciation is the one that affects the landforms that we see today, of course. And this map on the left shows where those lobes of the ice, the blue shows the extent of the ice in the last glaciation. And then the white shows the moraines that were left. I don't know if anybody remembers what a glacial moraine is, but Pam's pointing out there, those are the moraines. That's where a glacier stalled and deposited a lot of the gravel and rocks and sand that it had been carrying along the way. We see these moraines today as ridges on the landscape. And then the map on the right shows the kinds of material that was deposited by the glaciers. So overall, Forest Glen, where the little red dots are, you can see it was heavily impacted by these geologic forces. All right, next. And throughout the preserve, you can erratics. And these are basically big rocks that were dumped by the glaciers. And we have glacial erratics here in Kane County as well. And I love coming upon these because I imagine the ride that these things had on these huge ice sheets. And then as the ice melted, how they may have tumbled and just found a spot to rest. There is a wonderful one at Tekawitha Woods that it has kind of become famous because people have made it into a turtle, but it's a glacial erratic like this. And you see that line that in the middle, or that goes horizontally. Yeah, that's it. That's a cool feature of a lot of these rocks that came from way far up north. There's a lot of igneous material in the rocks, and igneous material was created by pressure and heat. Well, that long line is called a chill rind. So that's where the rock got suddenly really cold, and rind as in like, an orange rind or whatever. So it's kind of fun to see those when you find glacial erratics.
Cool.
All right, next.
Whoops.
KCCNers, I think you probably heard this truism before, that landforms beget life forms. So we learn the glacial history because it has such an impact on what we see today, on the life we see today. And that's certainly true in Vermilion County and Kane County as well. So as the glaciers receded, the materials that they left were able to become the soils that then allowed the vegetation to grow that we see today. All right, next. So what is Forest Glen from all of these geologic factors? What is Forest Glen ecologically? An ecologist named Schwegman came up with these natural divisions of Illinois. If you look up at where Kane County is, that light tan color, we're in the northeastern morainal section. That's what our area is called. And down where the red is at Forest Glen is called the Wabash Border Division and the Vermilion River section. Well, what does that jumble of words mean? It means this land is characterized by rugged topography, lots of ravines, and beech maple forests in the ravines. And it borders the Vermilion River and the tributaries that go into the Vermilion. So basically ravines, forested ravines. That's what this particular area in where Forest Glen is located. It's an ecotone, which means a transition between the beech maple forests of the east and then the Grand Prairie. So if you see to the largest natural division there, yes, Pam, that's it, that greenish color, that's the Grand Prairie. That's the prairie that made Illinois or gave Illinois the nickname the Prairie State. It was a vast grassland that Europeans had not seen before, and little did they know what was yet to come on the other side of the Mississippi with the grasslands out west. But anyway, so Forest Glen is kind of the transition between the forest of the east and the Grand Prairie of the west. There are also some very cool seeps and fens in this area as well. All right.
That diversity, you know, we tend to think of Illinois as just being, you know, well, it's our home state. It's, you know, kind of but look at all the different sections throughout here. I'm babbling, but
Yeah,
isn't it amazing. I mean, you see, okay, yeah, there's some woodlands, there's some wetlands, there's some prairies, but there are a lot of natural divisions.
Yeah, and if you've been along the Mississippi River, which is still Illinois, it's totally different than than an area in central Illinois, whatever. Yeah. All right. Next slide.
There we go.
And it's important to note that the area was occupied for thousands and thousands of years before Europeans came. The Miami Confederacy of Native Peoples were the first known in the Wabash Valley. I think I might have skipped over something here. The Vermilion River, by the way, empties into the Wabash River. Wabash Valley also includes the Vermilion River. So the Native Americans here were the Miami Confederacy, and that included Kickapoo and Piankashaw tribes. Also of note is in 1838, the Trail of Death led through Danville. Most people have heard of the Trail of Tears, but there was a similar Trail of Death of the Potawatomi. The Trail of Tears was a Cherokee, equally devastating and sad. The Potawatomis were pushed from northern Indiana through Illinois and into Kansas, where they were promised all kinds of wonderful land, and they found out they were just dumped somewhere where there were no resources whatsoever. But anyway, the Potawatomi went through there, but only on their forced exodus. All right, next. But now the cool stuff. We nature geeks like to dig into ecology a lot, and having formed the historical basis through the geology and so on, now we can look at the present day ecology. So I've mentioned beech maple forests before. these are pretty cool because we don't see beech maple forests around here. There's only like 2 spots in Illinois where this type of plant community exists, and Forest Glen is one of those. There's also a smattering of oak hickory woodlands at Forest Glen. There's a tall grass prairie, and then there are several seeps and fens. Right, next slide. So within the 1,900 acres, I think there might be more than 1,900 acres now, but within Forest Glen, there are 4 registered Illinois nature preserves. So the Illinois nature preserves are like extra special natural areas that may be within another agency's management, but they have an extra layer of protection because of unique ecological or geological features. So in Forest Glen, this gives you the quality of this area to have 4 nature preserves within its borders. The Duffin Woods, that's beech maple forest, the Forest Glen Seep, Howard's Hollow Seep, those are 2 fens, and then the Dorist Westfall Prairie. All right, next. So if you've been east, you may have seen, like in Ohio and places like that, this type of forest. Again, it's not very common. It's not common at all in Illinois. Trying to show a few beech trees here. There's an oak in the front left, and then right behind that, see that smooth bark tree? Yep, right there. That's a beech tree. I wish I had better photos of really big ones, but they're pretty easy to spot when you're walking in the woods because they have a very smooth, it kind of looks like, I don't know, like I imagine an elephant hide to look like, very, very gray and smooth. And again, here you can see the ravines, just lovely every season of the year. Okay, next.
Valerie, do people leave the beech trees, the smooth bark alone? The reason I ask is the junior high that I went to in Wheaton, in fact, this tree was just cut down this summer. It had been there for, I think they estimated it close to 100 years old. But it was, that smooth bark was such a magnet for pocket knives and carving initials and, hearts and all those sorts of things. Do you see much of that down there, or do people?
Well, I had to look hard through my photos to find one that did not have carvings in them.
Okay.
So
it's a thing.
It's a thing. It's like puffball mushrooms. The giant puffballs, people have this compulsion to smash them.
Pick them. Yeah.
Just because. And with beech trees, people have this compulsion to get out a knife and carve in them just because it's just irresistible or something.
Mm-hmm.
But that's vandalism and it's terrible. But when I used to teach dendrology, I said, well, the beech tree is easy to recognize because it's the one that has initials in it.
Okay, just wondering, yeah, because they're not, you're right, we don't see many beech tree, well, this type of beech tree around here. But that's what I remember. That was a tree I used to climb, and yeah, it had
all carved up. Yep.
Okay, right. Not to digress. Here we go.
Here's one that does. This is a beech tree that I found without knife marks in it and hearts and Susie loves Tommy and whatever. And looks like behind it is a red oak, just beautiful big trees. This is not virgin timber. It's not old growth, but there are sections of the woods that have been around for a long time and they have some very beautiful, big trees. And you can see ferns and things like that too. All right, next. It's very old photo, so the film color isn't very good, but in the fall, you can imagine a beech maple forest just glows with the brilliant colors. The yellows of the maple trees and then the beech trees turn kind of just a different shade, a darker shade of yellow, mixed in with oaks and things like that. It's really beautiful. So this was an October shot.
So Valerie, do you know the origins of that ridge there? Do you know, is it possible to tell if that's glacial or
Well, the
mining related?
preserve, this is one of countless ridges. So it's all ridges like that. And I believe it was the meltwater going down to the river. Then the river was cut by the glaciers. And then all the meltwater going down to the river caused these deep ravines. Almost every ravine has a creek in it.
Cool.
So, yeah. Next. And then, of course, there are the oaks and the hickories. So in the center, we have a lovely big white oak. And on the left shows a hickory bud. That's a mockernut hickory. We don't really have those in Kane County. It has very characteristically fuzzy, everything about it it's got fuzzy buds and twigs and leaves and everything. It's a really cool tree. It's related to a shagbark hickory. And many different oaks. I think that's I don't remember the common name, Muhlenbergii, I think on the right, but lots of diversity, great diversity of hardwoods. All right, next. And then of course we have the prairie. So this is the Dorst Westfall Prairie that I mentioned was an Illinois State Nature Preserve. It was the first restored prairie to become an Illinois State Nature Preserve. So most of the state nature preserves are in prairie are virgin prairie. But oh, thank you, Chinkapin oak. Yep. But this prairie was actually restored from row crop. This was row crops back up until the 70s. And a woman named Doris Westfall, just like typical gray-haired little old lady in tennis shoes, went before the board and she said, we need to have a prairie here because that's what this land was supposed to be. And so she recreated this prairie, and it's really beautiful. All seasons of the year. This was in July.
There you go, Doris.
Yeah. Next. And those of you who have explored prairies here in Kane County, you know that the wildflowers in the summer can be just beautiful. And you can hear the insects all around you and watch the sun set over prairie, and there's really nothing like it. It's just it pulls on my heartstrings. So this was at the Doris Westfall Prairie.
Cool shot with the sun there. That's awesome.
Next.
Oh boy, yay.
So this is an awesome place for herpetiles. And as you've learned from Pam, I'm sure that means reptiles and amphibians. Back when I was a grad student and I would go to Forest Glen whenever I could, I was taking the course called Natural History of Vertebrates, which included, of course, the native snakes and stuff like that. I went to Forest Glen once and I was just sitting by the side of one of the streams in the ravine, and I looked over to my left and there was this snake hanging out on a branch, like just right next to my head. And this was way before cell phones and cameras. Back when I was young was in like the 1800s and stuff, so we didn't have that stuff. But anyway, I couldn't wait to get back to my field guide and figure out what that snake was. It was a queen snake. This is on the right. That is not my photo. I got that online, but this is pretty much what it looked like when I was sitting at the edge of the stream. And it was so cool because I read the field guide and it said often hangs on branch over stream looking for fish. And so that's exactly what I had, seen. Now, Pam, you've seen a few queens here
Yeah,
in Kane County?
of late. Yeah, the last, oh, I think we saw the first one and it was at the mouth of Fearson Creek, where it meets the Fox River, where there's an abundance of rusty crayfish. And this is a snake that one of its favorite foods is freshly molted crayfish. So again, I don't know, correlation, causation. I don't know, if there's any connection at all. But yeah, we've since found a few others, not in that specific area, but along the Fox River in areas where we have lots of crayfish. And you look at it and you think, well, what makes it a queen snake? And there actually has a similar cousin, the Graham's crayfish snake. But they have that, both of them have that sort of olive, greenish, brownish top. But the queen snake has stripes on its bottom, the longitudinal stripes that go down the length, but on the belly, not on the top of the snake, which is where we often see markings.
Yeah.
So plain on top, but fancy underneath.
Yeah. Well, I go back to that same spot in the stream at Forest Glen, that same stream. I go back there all the time expecting to see a queen snake. And that one sighting was in like 1981 and I haven't seen one since. So, but I'm going to keep trying. So, and then over on the left, this was the on the outhouse at the campground, a lovely black rat snake that was vertically just, it looked like it was just stuck to the outhouse wall. But that was pretty cool. The black rat snakes are fairly common at Forest Glen. Lots of cool reptiles to discover. And that is a segue to the next slide, which is there are lots of turtles at Forest Glen. Find them almost every time that that I'm there. And Pam, maybe you could explain a little bit more the difference between the ornate box turtle
and the eastern.
Yeah,
so eastern box turtles prefer just what you've been describing in terms of habitat. They're a more of a woodland species, and they're larger. If we talk about the size of them, they have a higher dome to their shell. Now this one, there's no doubt this is a highly ornate looking eastern box turtle, but Terrapina ornata would be the ornate species, and this is Carolina, which would be the eastern box. And so yeah, higher dome to the shell, and then that highly patterned head. That's also the ornate box turtle tends to be more of a greenish head. Both species, in fact, I think all of our Midwest box turtles share the trait of eye color, helping to determine the sex of the turtle. When it's bright red like this, it's a male. And if it's if the eye color is brown or yellow or kind of there's a color that it kind of reminds me of when you're getting close to the Tootsie Roll center of the Tootsie Pop, orangish or yellowish with brown mixed in. All of those colors would indicate female, but bright red like this would be a male. All right. And boy, that's a lunker too. That's a
I know. Yep. Yeah, this was a healthy specimen. All right, next. And in terms of mammals, the white-tailed deer are a huge problem at Forest Glen. They are so overabundant, and it really is taking a toll on the vegetation. The Vermilion County Conservation District started a deer management program similar to what Kane County has, to just try to keep a little bit of a check on the deer population. But everywhere you look, there are white-tailed deer. This guy is a little button buck. You can see two little buttons where they yep. And all kinds of other mammals, like our friend the opossum. Saw Sally treed this one. And it only went up so far, and it's like, I'm not going to move. I'm just going to stay here as long as I have to. Yeah. All right, next. And other mammals that we maybe not see, but we know they're there because of what they leave. So the scat on the left caught my eye because of the bright red berries of the spice bush. So it happened to be spice bush season, and this skunk was eating spice bush. So there's skunk scat on the left, and I was quite happy not to see the actual skunk. And then just last week, Sally found me this mink scat on the right, and it was pretty fresh. Actually, 2 days we walked this trail, and there was new scat, but it had been stepped on. Sometimes with mink scat, you can see the little fish scales and stuff like that. This one, I poked around in it, and I wanted to be able to show some fish scales, but I did.
Maybe it was a frog.
Yes, it could have eaten, yep, something smushy. But it was right along the side of this little teeny rivulet, so that would have been great mink habitat there.
Now the skunk scat, I love the berries in it. But is it laying on top of another?
It looks like it. Yeah, it looks like over a raccoon or something.
Like I guess it's claiming sending a message.
Yeah. So I don't. Yes.
Mine's prettier.
So if you right. If Pam has talked to you guys about scat before, it's often placed in a certain way to send a message. Coyotes will leave their scat on top of deer scat or some other scat as a way of saying, I'm king of the mountain or whatever. It's their calling card. They want to have the last scent on there.
Oh, whoever it was that's underneath there, it looks like there's a little bit of berries.
Yeah, some orange in there
too, but look at the blunt edges.
Yeah, the Tootsie Roll look, which would tell me raccoon.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, all right, next.
Ooh.
And bird life. I am not good at all at photographing birds, so this is the best I could do, a feather and holes. But the bird life at Forest Glen is awesome. There's a very active Audubon Society down there, based out of Danville. In spring migration, oh my God, it's just like sensory overload. There are so many migrants, the warblers and vireos, raptors, so many different kinds of birds come through. But this was the best I could do, is to show you some woodpeckers. There are pileated always. I mean, I've never gone to Forest Glen and not seen pileated woodpeckers. I hear barred owls all the time, red-shouldered hawks along the river, just tons of birds.
Oh.
All right, next. And this is a video, and I would like you, all you listeners at home, to put your listening ears on and try to to decipher different sounds if you can in this video. If we can get it play, there we go.
Yep.
I'm not hearing anything, Pam. Are you getting any sound?
Oh. Yeah, I am, but you know
Okay.
what? I bet I didn't check the box. Hold on, let me see.
Is it going through your earbuds?
You know, when I click the screen share, you know, let me stop it. Because
Okay.
I'm loving all the sounds.
Oh,
But I
okay.
think I'm the only one that can hear. So sorry about this, folks. Wouldn't be a good natured hour without a technical glitch. Let me stop this, and I'm going to share again. But there's always these optimize and share sound. So let's go back, and we'll get back to where we left off.
Right there. Yeah.
Right, and share from current. All right. Oh. Current slide. Yeah.
Oh boy.
No,
Well, we can skip that one. That's all right.
you guys got to hear this. Oh, resume slideshow. There we go. How's that?
I'm hearing it.
All right. Except then I clicked on it again. There we go. Sorry about that. Look at all the little things. Baby hickory.
So there was quite a lot in the soundscape going on there. And one thing that was absent, which is such a blessing, is there were no airplanes going to O'Hare. So it's really nice to not have that urban sound, always in the background. But here I picked up, so this was in June of 2021. The drone in the background was the periodical cicadas. So that was like this constant noise in the background, but there were all kinds of songbirds in there. There were some vireos. There was a yellow-billed cuckoo calling. I think there was a parula in there. Met lots of different songbirds. And then there was occasionally a fowler's toad making his weird sound. Yep, just like that. And then what else did we hear?
You can start it again too.
Yeah.
Get a nice. This reminds me of those nature, like soothing nature videos.
Right, for yoga. The leopard frog in there too, huh?
Oh, cool.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that's just one of the wonderful things about going out and like not hearing human sounds. All right, next.
Oop.
And well, you can't see her, but that's Mary Alice Masonic, whom some of you may know. She's been a camping buddy of mine numerous times at Forest Glen. And there's one thing I can be sure of when I go with Mary Alice is I always find a new, to me, cool insect. And I don't know whether it's that she has extra good eyes for it. Her son happens to be an entomologist. So I don't know. But the next few slides will show some of the things that Mary Alice and I have discovered at Forest Glen. So next. We always see firefly larvae. So this was taken at night flash, but these little guys, they do glow just the same way the adults do, or the same, color as the adults. And it's very fun in like late summer to walk along the trails, and then just here and there you see these little teeny glows on the ground. Then we get down super close to them, and then you can see that they're the larva of the lightning bug.
Well, so prehistoric looking.
Yes, right. All right, next. This one is in fact a caterpillar. It sure as heck looks like part of the tree, but that is a caterpillar. It was moving.
Wow.
Just amazing.
Cool.
Yeah. All right, next. Okay, this is another treat. You'll hear Mary Alice and I wondering about it in the background, but this was on our tent.
Aphids.
This is an animal.
Oh. Would you like to send it to Paul? Yeah. Or send it to me when I charge my phone.
That's so cool.
So it's like this little ball of fuzz that's moving around it. Like if it would hit, it came up upon that seam, and then it would just turn and go the other way, like a bumper car kind of thing. And there were little legs underneath it. Well, it turns out it's a debris carrying lacewing. So it's the larva of an insect called a lacewing. And I read a description there. It's like sheep or wolf in sheep's clothing, because they're really voracious creatures. But you wouldn't know it looking at this little fuzzy little thing kind of moving around. They will prey on an animal, then take the remains of that animal and put it on their backs, and put like trash on their backs until they're completely hidden. Or they'll pull guts out, they'll pull whatever, and then fashion it on themselves to hide themselves. So they're literally carrying the trash or the debris of their victims. And underneath are these really, really voracious and vicious larvae. They'll eat just about anything. Not us, of course, but you'd be shaking in your boots if you were a little teeny creature. So that was a cool discovery, as we just looked over on our tent and there it was. All right, next. And of course, the guy on the left is one of those lovely periodical cicadas. So I've seen them. This is brood 10. There are different broods for different regions of the country, or the eastern part of the United States. And brood 10 emerged in 2021. And then 17 years before that, I happened to be camping at Forest Glen when they were out. 17 years hence, I'm not sure if I'll be there, but I would hope so. So actually 16 years from now, I've got 16 years to go to see the next brood emerge.
You got this.
And then all kinds of arachnids and other invertebrates. It's there's just no end to what you can discover. Right, next. There are also cultural features at Forest Glen. If you're interested in historical programs and things like that, the Conservation District built a pioneer homestead cabin. So on the left, you'll see this cabin that they had local carpenters build as authentically as possible. That's all from timber that was milled in the area. So it's got black walnut, white oak, tulip tree, just so made out of as much authentic material as possible. And it's beautiful inside. I don't have any photos inside, but they do historical interpretation there. And it's yeah, it's really an interesting experience. And just near the cabin, the Pioneer Cabin, is the Sugar Shack, where they actually produce maple syrup the old-fashioned way. They've got the they boil it down in there. They've got all the equipment circa early 1900s, late 1800s, early 1900s style. And then they have a big maple sugaring festival, and they sell, they're able to sell what they produce there. So you get to see it done in a bigger scale than what we do in Kane County. Next. Another thing that Forest Glen features is some forestry projects. One project that's I think really cool is that they are researching shiitake mushrooms, growing shiitake mushrooms. So they have a whole section where they've inoculated logs with these different strains, I guess, and and then they harvest the mushrooms. And then I've been there when they've there was a small group of us that they made some very tasty dishes with the mushrooms that were right from those logs. So that was cool.
Oh,
yeah. Next. So it's Forest Glen is near and dear to my heart. I've been I cut my naturalist eye teeth there long ago when I was in my 20s. I taught outdoor school there. Next.
hold on. We have to appreciate this for just a moment.
Yeah, no gray hair at that time.
time.
Kids all look the same. I mean, you know, like, what are they, fourth graders or something like that? They don't change. So,
Look at that.
yeah. So, and I've been camping with my kids there since they were teeny. So my son Colin has gone with me many, many times. And now his daughter, my granddaughter Kylie, and I go camping there. We've been there 3 times together for some girl retreat. So it's everybody has, I think, their heart home. And for me, this is it. Your heart home may be something totally different, but I think it's good for us to have a place that where we feel that our spirit belongs. And I hope that everyone can enjoy a place like this for themselves. So next. So that's a little bit of my spiel for tonight. Now you know where Forest Glen is and a little bit about what it has to offer. I would love it if more naturalists would go down there and enjoy it the way I have. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. So there's the Grand Prairie down there. There's the beautiful forests, the rivers, the ravines, and next slide. There are still dark skies to marvel at night. So definitely a place that you should visit at least once. And that's my spiel for tonight.
Very cool. Wow, Valerie, that was awesome. I'm gonna stop the share here. Looks like we had a couple more chats pop up. Tribbles. So yeah, in reference to the lacewing larva on your tent, it does.
Oh,
Was an excellent tribble,
yeah.
miniature tribbles.
Mhm. Yeah.
And Diane, another Star Trek fan. And Sarah says, thank you. We all say thank you.
Well, thanks to you guys for listening. And Illinois is an awesome place. I mean, people tend to kind of think, oh, Illinois is boring, whatever. But really, we've got some really special places, and I think us nature nerds can really are in a position to really appreciate them.
Well, you know, these county places is state parks. The Illinois State Tourism Board does a really good job of promoting a lot of the bigger state parks that we have in the area. But these county, you know, they might market it locally, but it doesn't usually make it onto any sort of a regional promotional effort. And that's probably, like you said at the beginning, it's probably a good thing to keep these places quiet so they stay, you know, relatively pristine. I know you did say you like to visit, though. You like to go on weekdays as opposed to weekends, because it does have.
Yes, it's for, I mean, the local people love they call them parks. They love their parks, and the parks are very well utilized. But you know, as with anywhere, you'll get your picnics and you know, the group family reunion stuff. You'll get that stuff more on the weekends. And one of the many wonderful things about being retired is that I can just take off on a weekday, and yeah, I just prefer that.
Very cool. Well, Ralph and Ann say thank you too, as do I. Much appreciate you putting the time into the creation of the slideshow, and then of course
Well,
presenting
thank you
it.
for having me, and it's good to see all you folks. And I hope you guys have a good Thanksgiving and enjoy the snowy week ahead.
Cheers.
Thanks,
All right.
Valerie. Thank you, Valerie.
All
Thanks,
right.
Valerie.
Good night.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you,
Okay.
Pam. Thank you,
Have a good
Valerie.
day.
Thank you, Pam
Thank
and Valerie.
Thank you.
Take care, everybody.
Thank you. Night.